More than 20 people have been killed in Gaza in an Israeli airstrike on a mosque and a former school. The Hamas-run Gaza media office said 93 other people were injured in the attack that took place early Sunday morning in the central town of Deir al-Balah. It said the school was being used to shelter displaced people. Israel says the two facilities were Hamas command centers. Meanwhile, Lebanon's capital, Beirut, has been rocked by more explosions as Israel presses ahead with its attacks against Hezbollah militants. The airstrikes come as Israel and the world prepare to mark the one-year anniversary of Hamas's terror attacks, which sparked Israel's military operations.
Another night of powerful explosions in the southern suburbs of Lebanon's capital, Beirut. The blasts followed an Israeli military warning for residents to evacuate. On the other side of the border, Israel said it intercepted nearly 100 projectiles fired from Lebanon on Saturday. France's President Emmanuel Macron, speaking after a summit of French-speaking leaders in Paris, criticized Israel's ground operation in Lebanon and called for a ceasefire. Macron also defended a radio interview in which he urged an end to arms deliveries to Israel.
We aim to be consistent. When we call for a ceasefire, as we did for Gaza and as we did for Lebanon last week, we try not to call for a ceasefire while continuing to deliver weapons of war. And I think that's just being consistent.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who says his country is under threat from all sides, quickly fired back.
All civilized countries should be standing firmly by Israel's side. Yet President Macron and some other Western leaders are now calling for an arms embargo against Israel. Shame on them. Israel will win with or without their support. But their shame will continue long after the war is won.
And as the fighting rages on, Lebanese civilians continue to flee their homes. The head of the UN's refugee agency warns Lebanon is facing a terrible crisis.
Journalist Stella Männer is in Beirut. Hi, Stella. So we've had another night of Israeli airstrikes on the capital. Which targets were struck?
So the Israeli army says that it is targeting Hezbollah infrastructure. But of course, we have to keep in mind that the Israeli army is not a neutral source. And for us here on the ground, it is very much impossible to verify whether this information is true or not. Fact is that there has been a number of airstrikes on the southern suburbs again. It was reported to be the hardest night of airstrikes in this area so far. We have residents and local media who report that these airstrikes have also been taking place very close to the airport. Someone even said that they hit a wall, or like shrapnels hit a wall of the airport. But of course, this is also just what residents say. I couldn't verify this information. We just know that the fighting and the bombing is very strong in the southern suburbs.
And there are reports that Hezbollah has lost contact with the man many believe to be the group's next leader. Do you know anything about this?
So Hashem Saifuddin is known to be the target of a big airstrike that Israel carried out on Friday. Ever since then, security sources say that the organization has lost contact with him. Saifuddin is a potential successor for Nasrallah. He is his cousin, but he also is the leader of Hezbollah's executive council. Well, there is so far no confirmation by Hezbollah itself, but these rumors are a little bit like normal. Sometimes Hezbollah acts in this way that they first spread rumors just to prepare their members for a potential announcement of its death. But Hezbollah Media Center also issued a statement saying that speculations about the fate of leaders are just rumors and shouldn't be taken serious.
The Israeli army claims to have killed 440 plus Hezbollah fighters during its ground incursion into Lebanon What does Hezbollah say about the fighting in the south?
Hezbollah said that it carried out two major operations, one on the Lebanese territory where they pushed back Israeli forces who invaded into the country. The other operation has taken place in northern Israel. Hezbollah said it attacked soldiers who were evacuated from the Lebanese territory because they were wounded. In both operations, there have been casualties. What we also hear from colleagues who are on the ground in the south is that the ground fighting is heavily going on, and it seems like it's shifting towards bigger fights inside the Lebanese territory. The village in the south called Adasiya is still a key position where these fights are taking place. The Israeli army used Adasiya, this village, as an entry point into Lebanon, and colleagues who are on the ground down there have said that apparently there is like a big municipality building that seems to be the center of fighting, and where both parties seem to get over or wanting to get overhand over this building.
Journalist Stella Männer, thank you so much for joining us. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres released a statement on Saturday denouncing Hamas and calling for an immediate end to the, quote, shocking violence and bloodshed in Gaza and Lebanon. Earlier in the week, Israel declared the UN chief a persona non grata, denying him entry into the country. Guterres' statement comes on the eve of the October 7th anniversary, when Hamas militants abducted 251 people, 97 of whom are still in Gaza.
It's time for the release of the hostages, time to silence the guns, time to stop the suffering that has engulfed the region. Time for peace, international law, and justice. The United Nations is fully committed to achieving these goals. In the midst of so much bloodshed and division, we must hold on to hope. Let us honor the memory of the victims, reunite families, and end the suffering and violence in the whole Middle East. And let us never stop working for a lasting solution to the conflict, where Israel, Palestine, and all other countries of the region can finally live in peace and dignity and with respect for one another.
Tens of thousands have joined anti-war demonstrations around the world before Monday's anniversary of the Hamas terror attacks against Israel and the start of the war in Gaza. Protesters called for a ceasefire in both Gaza and Lebanon. The Spanish capital, Madrid, was the scene of one of the biggest pro-Palestinian protests in Europe.
Thousands gathered on the streets of Madrid to demand a ceasefire in Gaza and show support for the Palestinian people. Protesters in Rome demonstrated peacefully until a smaller group clashed with police who tried to block them from entering the city center. At demonstrations in London, thousands called for an end to the escalating conflict in the Middle East 1 year after the October 7th attacks in Israel.
It's just tragic that it's gone on for a year and it hasn't got better, it's got worse. I know Palestinians who live outside Gaza whose families are really suffering from this, and it just must be absolutely heartbreaking and it's just unbelievable what people are going through in Gaza and now also in Lebanon.
The protests ranged far beyond Europe as well, like here in the Indian city of Bangalore. And in Cape Town, where demonstrators marched to the South African Parliament.
South Africans all need to unite to stand up against what Israel is doing to Palestinians. It's absolutely abhorrent. I can't believe it's still going.
Sentiments that bring people around the world out to support the Palestinians in Gaza.